In today's world, one of the worst things you could do is get trapped in the mindset of not caring about your diet. If this is you, you'll realize the damage that it causes. Eventually. If you do practice healthy eating, you've probably been lost in the maze of healthy diets that are promoted by random gurus on the internet that tell you that this diet or strategy of eating is the best way to do it.
What if vegetables aren't good for you?
And you're probably sitting there wondering, what the heck is going on? These are all confusing and conflicting. Which one makes sense? Literally scroll on your phone for a second. There will be someone telling you vegetables are bad. Someone telling you meat's bad. Someone telling you don't eat protein powder. There are a lot of myths and uninformed perspectives out there. So let's dive on this journey together, talk a little bit more about which diet is best and which one might be best for you. But first off, you have to assess what's important. Some diets just won't make any sense for you. If you're trying to embark on a fat loss journey, it's gonna be a different diet. Muscle gain journey, maybe a different diet. If you have certain health conditions, probably a different diet. If you have kidney disease, different diet. If you're trying to save money, get my point? So it's important to look at your goals and also even your geographic location. So if you live a certain place, it may not be easy to get certain foods that it would be if you live somewhere else. Even look at your own income. If you're struggling paycheck to paycheck, it probably won't make sense to eat 2 ribeyes a day, carnivore diet style. That's just gonna add up very quickly and probably end up very poorly. So before you go through the video, I would probably make a bullet point list of 2 or 3 points that are most important to you, and then think about those as you go through this. So in 7th place, we have the vegan diet, which unfortunately is my least favorite way of eating. So the vegan diet primarily focuses on eating non-animal based compounds. So think about fruits, vegetables, grains, things that grow outside that are not animal based. So no meat, no fish, no dairy, no eggs. But if you are vegetarian, you may be throwing in some of those things or sprinkling it in a little bit. The vegan diet's primarily focused on ethical and environmental reasons, even some health reasons for some people. And it's aimed really just to reduce the ecological footprint that we have as humans. For most vegans I know, really the reason that they eat it is just for compassion for animals. Honestly, if you look up some videos of like cows and pigs, they kind of act like dogs, which is pretty strange. You may argue, oh, humans are at the top of the food chain, they should be able to eat everything underneath it. And while I do agree to a certain extent, I understand the compassion component for some vegans. As for health benefits, really not too much. Sure, someone eating a vegan diet will probably be healthier than someone eating just like a standard American diet. Eating fruits and vegetables are very healthy and nutritious overall. But really one of the main issues that comes with a vegan diet is that it often requires supplementation. So in a vegan diet, you're not really getting any of the nutrients that are coming from animal-based compounds. So think about things like vitamin B12, vitamin K, iron, EPA, DHA, all these things commonly come from animal-based compounds and products. So you're not gonna be getting them in a vegan diet. And if you do stick to a vegan diet over a long term, you're probably gonna be getting some deficiencies in these if you're not supplementing them outside of the diet. So that is a big reason why a lot of people eventually quit the vegan diet. Sure, your cholesterol might improve, your blood pressure might improve if you're going from eating a pretty shitty junk food diet to a vegan diet, but you will need the supplementation. On top of that, sometimes plant cell walls can't be broken down by your small intestine, causing some digestive issues. There's some issues with absorbing nutrients, like iron is gonna be difficult to be absorbed in a plant-based diet. So it is gonna be pretty challenging on those aspects. And beyond that, if you want to make gains, getting enough protein in a vegan diet, it just isn't the most ideal. Sure, there are plenty of vegan bodybuilders, but it is hard to get foods with higher ratios of protein compared to all the other macronutrients, so it may not be the best for building muscle, although it can be done. My thoughts, I'm Greek, we eat lamb. Not realistic for me to be vegan, although I do understand some of the compassion aspects, just don't really think it's the best diet overall for humans. In 6th place, we have the keto diet, which is short for the ketogenic diet, which is based on eating very low carbs, very high fat, normal amount of protein. The theory behind this is that it shifts your body to a state of ketosis, which relies on burning ketones for fuel. Ketones are coming from breaking down body fat, and your body's using those for energy rather than glucose and carbohydrates that you may be getting from your diet or from your liver. For me, one of the pros of the keto diet is just mental clarity. And you will not know what I mean unless you've been in ketosis before. So think about when you have like a big carb heavy meal, like maybe after Thanksgiving or something like that, or a pasta dinner, you feel sleepy and relaxed. So think of this as like the exact opposite of that. You just feel sharp, you feel clear. All the brain fog in your head is just removed. Also, the diet is just pretty simple. Just don't eat carbs. Simple rules do help a lot of people. And many diets are generally just carb heavy, so limiting carbs altogether will probably be good for fat loss altogether. But the issue is carbs are delicious and also fuel performance. And they're also protein sparing, so they will help you build muscle in the absence of protein. But let me tell you what's happened to every single person I know that has done the keto diet. They go ahead, eat their ranch covered bacon and butter. They go ahead and eat all their meat and things of that sort. And then they lose like 5 or 6 pounds of water weight the first week. They get hooked. They stick to the diet a little bit longer. They may lose 20, 30 pounds over the course of the next few months. But every single person I know has gone back to eating normally afterwards. They eat a carb. On a night out, they're looking good. They're 30 pounds lighter. They go ahead and have some pasta. And then the next week, they're up 5 pounds of water weight. They're like, what the heck? I'm all bloated. Where did all this water come from? They go back to eating carbs normally. They realize carbs trigger some of their hunger even more. And eventually, all the people that I know that have done the keto diet have gained that weight back from the keto diet. And many of them did lose it again, but they lost it again by doing some sort of sustainable diet. So that is the issue with this. It is not sustainable. You probably can't stick to it for a long term. You're gonna eat a carb eventually. And if you are one of those people that's done the keto diet for 20 years, you've been doing okay, you've kept all the weight off, more power to you, but it's just not for most people. So for this, I probably wouldn't touch it unless you could actually stick to it. Maybe someone who needs to lose water weight for a weight-based competition, like wrestling or something like that. But for the mass majority, not ideal. All right, in fifth place, we have the carnivore diet, which is very trendy lately, primarily focused on eating animal-based products and compounds. And there are multiple tiers to this. So at the top of the pyramid, like the most restrictive and most, carnivore-ish based one is eating red meat, organs. Maybe some people throw in some like raw dairy and things like that. Lower on, less restrictive is throwing in other types of meats, pork, poultry, even fish. And then the least restrictive form of carnivore, which is not really carnivore, it's kind of like, is when you throw in fruits. So you eat all the meats, all the fruits, and that is your diet. So again, this diet is pretty simple. You really just can't eat a whole lot. If you do the lesser intense version, you're probably not really missing out on any nutrients either. And this is pure anecdote, but a lot of the benefits that people think come from the carnivore diet is reduced inflammation, improvement of autoimmune conditions. I know Michaela Peterson, who's Jordan Peterson's daughter, eats a carnivore-based diet, and I think her autoimmune issues went away. And there's a lot of anecdotes about that out there. But again, it is anecdote, and there are a lot of studies that people cherry pick and nitpick out there that say, oh, this is why the carnivore diet is best. But there's really not any population-wide, very big studies that carnivore diet is the best diet for everyone. It's just not founded in science. But beyond that, red meat, it is just expensive. And I know there's gonna be someone that says, oh, you could buy this 70% pasture-raised lean meat, bison, turkey, beef from this butcher and it's cheap that way. But I don't care. It's still pretty expensive and not ideal and sustainable for most people. Like, I'm not gonna go to a restaurant and be like, I will have the ribeye, nothing else on the side. Please only cook it in butter though, or I'll be really upset and my whole diet's gonna be messed up. Just not realistic. But if you can stick to this and you feel good on it, more power to you. Overall though, I do like this one because it really focuses on my favorite foods. I always joke that I can literally live off of steak, pineapple, and if you count ice cream as dairy, although it's probably not, I could probably live on those things, so that could be the basis of a lot of my diet. But again, it is not sustainable for most. I think this one is pretty hyped, and I think in a few years, we're probably gonna look back on it as just like one of the diets that we looked on in the past as being a fad of this time. In fourth place, we have intermittent fasting, which is more of a eating strategy focused on when you eat rather than what you can eat. So there are multiple tiers to this. One of the most common forms of intermittent fasting is a 16-hour fasting window with an 8-hour eating window. Typically, you're eating between the hours of, say, 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. There are variations of this. You could have a shorter eating window where you're only eating 4 or 6 hours. Some people do OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, where you literally only have 1 meal, fast the rest of the clock. And there's even more restrictive forms of that. You could do alternate day fasting or longer periods of fasting several times a year. And intermittent fasting is very hit or miss for most people. One of the pros is fat loss. If you are restricting the times that you can eat throughout the day, many times you're just going to be restricting the amount of calories you eat too, leading to fat loss. It just works for some people. Some people like fewer but larger meals. So if you have a big appetite or you like skipping breakfast, this one might be for you. When you know you can't eat, you may also find yourself a little bit more productive. Like when I intermittent fast and I know I can't eat until like 12 or 1 p.m., I'm just working. I'm a workhorse in the morning, not thinking about food. It's kind of like that state in ketosis that I mentioned earlier. There are also some minor benefits with inflammation, killing cancer cells, blood sugar, but those are commonly found with those longer forms of fasting, but could be present in like a minor extent with a 16-8 type style. But some people just need to eat more often. My wife, Abby, amazing person, so kind, loving, and caring. Her amazingness doesn't shine when she doesn't eat in the morning. But honestly, the biggest con, in my opinion, of intermittent fasting is that it could cause disordered eating. So eventually you may train yourself and your body and mind that you can only be satisfied with very large meals. Or even if you just let yourself get really hungry, you're waiting patiently for that eating window, you may trigger binge eating behaviors, which are not fun. And if you want to build muscle, you need to have protein spaced out throughout the day just for ideal muscle protein synthesis. So if you're restricting protein to a small eating window, it may not be the best long-term for building muscle, although it certainly can be done. I do like intermittent fasting though. It works for me for the most part, definitely worth trying. But the second I see some disordered eating, especially in like a prolonged fat loss period, I cut that shit out immediately, move on to something else. In third place, we have the Paleo diet, which is short for the Paleolithic diet. This one is based on the premise that our ancestors in the Paleolithic era had it figured out. The thought process behind this is that humans were genetically adapted to eat these foods that were present in their environment, like lean meats, fruits, vegetables, vegetables, seeds, and avoid foods like grains, dairy products, and any processed foods that you probably see in a grocery store today. So let's break this down. I think eating whole unprocessed foods is great. Probably the best way to eat. You're eating quality. It really doesn't get any more simple than that. Fewer preservatives, fewer pesticides, just quality food that probably will have less of an impact on your health in the long term, which is one thing that people that eat the paleo diet think, is that the food that we eat today causes a lot of the disease in society. But we don't want to fall into the naturalistic fallacy. Just because something is natural doesn't mean that it's good for you. Arsenic, cyanide, all naturally occurring. They are poisonous. Same thing with water. If you have too much water, I promise you're not going to be having a good time. And on the flip side, just because something is modern doesn't mean that it's bad. There are plenty of modern life-saving treatments out there, so don't get in the mindset of modern equals bad. But again, with this diet, if you have to eat out, it just isn't the most sustainable. There's probably going to be some dairy thrown in things, some grains, but arguably this one you may be able to get away with depending on how you adjust your diet and being very nitpicky in a menu. So I do like the general principles of this diet, not because I think our ancestors had it figured out or anything, but just because I think eating whole unprocessed foods is probably a good way to eat. In second place, we have IIFYM, and I do go way back with this one. So this stands for if it fits your macros, and it is an eating strategy focused on eating a specific macronutrient ratio and target rather than specific foods. So you have this ratio of proteins, carbohydrates, and fat, and you're eating foods to fit those numbers that you have set for yourself. This creates a lot of flexibility. You could pick and choose a lot of foods, and really the end goal is just to fit it in those values. So for that reason, it's pretty fun. It's almost like a puzzle. You can fit in a lot of foods in your diet, have a lot of flexibility, and if you see some very jacked or ripped people flexing with like 5 cheeseburgers in front of them or eating like a huge pizza, they're probably implementing some aspect of if it fits your macros into their diet to be able to fit those foods in. But the problem comes when you take it too far, like I did in high school. So let me tell you a story. I wanted to get abs in high school, wanted to get super ripped and shredded. I thought intermittent fasting was going to be great. So I would literally fast all day. I'd skip lunch at school. I'd just be sitting in the cafeteria with like a water. And then I'd get home like 3 or 3:30. I'd make this big bowl of like Greek yogurt, protein powder, cinnamon toast crunch, Pop-Tarts, drizzle some like chocolate syrup on top, and I eventually got ripped. But clearly this was not the best for health. If you're just focusing on macros, you're going to be avoiding a lot of nutrient-dense foods that are going to be the key to health and living long. You could literally get table sugar, olive oil, and protein powder and fit it into some sort of macros, but that isn't going to be the most nutritious for you. So use if it fits your macros as a tool. If you are tracking macros, try to keep 80 to 90% of your diet those whole unprocessed foods that are traditionally healthy, and then give yourself like 10 to 20% of some flexibility. That probably is the best way long term. And so before I reveal my thoughts on the best diet, I do want to rapid review a few other ones that didn't really make the list but are worth noting. So first one is the low-fat diet, which I think is arguably the worst one, worse than the vegan diet. Do not do a low-fat diet. This one is super popular in like the late 1900s. I swear sometimes my mom, when I was younger, would point at like a nutrition label. She's like, oh, this food has fat. It's not good for you, right? Like, no. Shout out mom, she's come a long way now though. But fats are very essential for hormone production, feeling good. So definitely don't do a low-fat diet unless you want to have low libido and just generally feel like crap. Shout out to my mom though, an honorable mention will be the Mediterranean diet, which is the diet of my people. So this one's based on eating fresh fish, fruits, vegetables, dairy, and a lot of olive oil. The basics of this diet generally just mimic good nutrition. Whole foods, tons of fruits and veggies, healthy fats. Its benefits are very well documented, plenty of studies that suggest it is one of the best, but really there is some data lately that suggests that olive oil is the biggest reason that this diet is healthy. The polyphenols, the anti-inflammatory compounds, are one of the big factors of why the Mediterranean diet is so healthy, so make sure you include some olive oil. Another diet I tried in the past was Whole30. So this one is like a 30-day reset, pretty much like an elimination diet. You start with like a very bare bones basic diet, removing a lot of like grains, sugar, alcohol, beans. And then as you do this 30-day kind of cleanse where you reset everything, you start slowly reintroducing foods. And then you keep a diary of what affects you, and you keep away from the foods that affect you negatively, and you keep including the ones that make you feel good. If you have issues with food and you're not sure what bothers you, this one could be worth a try. But if you don't, not really any benefit to it. Also, given that many of us lift, I will touch on carb cycling as well. So think of carb cycling as keto's like more approachable cousin. So you have low carb days, which are basically the keto diet, medium carb days, which are eating pretty normally, and then higher carb days. This one is more common with bodybuilders in a contest prep. And the theory behind it is that higher carb days increase the hormone leptin, which is a fat loss hormone that eventually gets a little bit lower as you are in a prolonged weight loss phase. But there's really not a lot of research to promote the effectiveness of the diet. And until there is, I probably won't stick to it or really diligently try to stick to one. If you have a good reason for doing it, there's really no harm in it, but it involves a lot of tracking, but does emphasize some variety, which I do enjoy. Now for first place. I feel like I need a trumpet, like celebrating first place, but it's going to be a very cliche answer. And it is a mix of all these diets. What works for me probably won't work for you, and it won't work for my neighbor that I've never met or my dog that's sniffing under my door right now. Listen, I want to be healthy. I want to live long, but I'm not gonna stress out over the cookies that my mom makes once a year on Christmas. I'm not gonna stress out about a glass of wine on my Wednesday date night. So here's what I do. I start with a basic if it fits your macros approach where I have macronutrient targets and I eat 80 to 90% pretty clean and healthy, paleo diet style. I'll include a lot of olive oil, Mediterranean diet style. A few times a week, I will eat quality red meats and plenty of fruit, carnivore diet style. There are probably some days where I eat more carbs, some days where I eat fewer carbs, creating a natural carb cycle. On weekends, I may go a little crazy and I might have a burger or some ice cream, and I fit it in my diet if it fits your macro style, and I just don't stress. There are plenty of people talking about which diet is super optimal and the best, but that just stresses you out. It's far healthier just to choose something and go with it instead of stressing. Like we talked about earlier, assess what's important for you. Look at the list you made earlier in the video and decide which diets fit best for you. Pick and choose different parts of it that you think might work for you. Experiment, play around. Your body is a machine. Treat it like an experiment and just find what makes you feel good and look good. And beyond that, just live. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, make sure to drop a like. Make sure to comment which diet styles you like to do. If you want to see more videos from me, check out my page and make sure to subscribe. And if you are interested in taking your physique to the next level, losing body fat, building muscle, improving your confidence, make sure you fill out my coaching application in the bio, and I'll see you in the next video.